I turn that motion blur back on and the depth of field, I bet you this shit would plummet down to under 30. Because it did, it sat at about 30 with overclocked ones, with those on 1080p low before with me. But yeah, 32, 31. So my minimum's 31 so far, maximum's 46, averaging 36 frames per second. But these are when the real tests start coming in. Once they start doing these gravity-defying shits and start launching shit around the room and stuff, that's where we'll see some frame changeage. But it's actually doing really good. Sitting at 37. 31, 29. Oh, so there we go. It dropped down to 28 there for a second. But that's not a huge range, you know. I mean, from 28 is the low and 46 is the high. That's a pretty solid little range, you know. But so, you know, you can really see, you know, at the frames display the difference in the years and what the games require and stuff like that, you know. So 10 years ago, you can get 60 frames a second, no problem whatsoever on 1080p low, over 60. 5 years ago, 1080p is getting you about 40 something frames per second. Nowadays, you're lucky to get 30 frames per second on this thing. But it did go up to 40 a few times, you know, but now we're down under 30, now we're at 27, 26. But it's smooth, you know, even at 30, you know, when it's down to 27, it's not, you didn't see any glitching, you didn't see any jumping or skipping or hopping or any of that bullshit. Oh, Jesus. Oh, God, sorry about that. That's my fault. I'm a klutz. So yeah, she does very, very well for the most part, you know. Alright, so this one does have a compare results online, so 4609, so frames per second minimum, average 34.47. So 60 something frames per second on Heaven, 40 something frames per second on Valley, 34 something frames per second on Superposition. Let's compare, just to go see real quick. I know I've already looked on here. So we were running 10. They don't have, because I did a custom one, we were running 1080p low. But let's even compare it against 10 people that were running 1080p medium, and you can see where we still are pretty poor, you know, compared to what a real freaking GPU was actually running. So 4609 was our score on low. Here's a guy at 45, and he's running the Intel i5 4570, and he's got a GTX 760. So we're doing worse pretty much than a GTX 760 with an Intel i5. You know, take that for what you will. Here's an i3 660. There's some dumbass had an Intel i7 4770 with a GTX 1080 and somehow only put out a 3000 score on fucking 1080p medium. What was he doing to his fucking card? Holy shit. Here's the Ryzen 3. So, oh, and here's it's Son of a Tech. What do you know? Son of a Tech on here with his little score. At 1888 on 1080p medium. So there is a 1500 on here. Let's do that then. Let's do 1080p medium real quick, and then we can compare it against Son of a Tech's Ryzen 2200G score that he got. So custom 1080p medium. So that's going to put on medium, 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 and on and on. Let's see what she does. And while this is running, I'm going to go grab some more water real quick. So let's see, we're sitting at about 18 frames a second. So see, this is where you start noticing its lack of performance. The 1080p medium just is a little too demanding for this guy, especially on stock like this. So we're averaging about 19 frames a second right now. And it hasn't got to the hard ones yet. Oof. Yeah, see now we're down to about 15, 16 frames per second. And again, it's not like it's super glitchy. It's not a slideshow. Everything is still relatively smooth on it. So it's doing the best that it can. But again, this is a synthetic benchmark, so everything is already predetermined where it's going to go and what it's going to do. Whereas in a video game, it's a little more demanding. So if you're running at 17 frames per second in a video game, you might not be getting such a clear, non-choppy performance. So 1080p medium is really not where you want to be on your video games on this chip, especially at stock like this. Now an older game, like I said, the one that's made back in 2007, I can run 1080p medium on that other one, and it crushes it. I mean, it does real well. But on this, on this newer game, newer benchmark like this, nah, it just ain't gonna happen. But again, as you can see, it's not choppy, it's not glitchy, it's not jumping, there's no ripping or tearing. It's doing very well for what it is, just low frames. So 2440 is what we got on 1080p medium. And again, we go back on here real quick. We'll see what Son of a Tech had. 1080p medium. Go to last. So Son of a Tech was sitting at 1888 with the Ryzen 3 2200G, and we're sitting at 2440, pretty much stock, other than the RAM, with this. Oh, good, it did recognize my RX Vega 11 graphics and everything correctly. Can't publish it onto here to, compete with him because I have to upgrade to the full edition, and I'm not paying whatever that fee is, so no. So 2440. So here, see, I think I have some quick ones I can show you real fast too. Screenshots, yep. So here was pretty much me doing the same thing. So this was a 2400G, completely bone stock right out of the box, was 51.98 frames per second. And we got better than that just by increasing, the RAM to 3200 megahertz and giving it the 2 gigabyte thing. So stock out of the box, it got 51 frames and 818 score on the multi-core. And then once I cranked it up, see here, I put it to 39 megahertz on all cores. So I just overclocked to 39 on all cores, gave it 1.35 volts for the cores to keep it stable. And then again, I just put the 3200 RAM up and increased the 2 gigabyte cache. And on this one, I was getting 67 frames per second. And the CPU got an 859. Not bad. Now, the next one, I cranked it up to 4 gigahertz. And again, just left the 3200 RAM and the 2 gigabyte cache on the VRAM. And got it up to 68 frames per second and an 878. Not too shabby. And then lastly, let's see, these two were different ones. Let's see, this was at 4.1 gigahertz, but it was 68 again. And I got an 890 on that one. And then this one would have been the next most recent. Again at 4.1 gigahertz. I had it running stable for Cinebench. Got it an 895. I almost cracked that damn 900, man. I was so close. And then this would have been the last one that I did, which I'm not sure what this was. 4 gigahertz, 70 frames per second. I think that was just showing the frames per second, so I got a really good frame per second on it. Yeah, 68, and I got, what, 72 on that one? No, 70. I'm pretty sure my highest has been 72. So, as you can see, I had this thing running stable at 4.1 gigahertz. Got an 895 Cinebench, still only running at 68 frames per second for the most part. Because I didn't overclock any of the GPU on any of these. These were all just CPU overclocking. I didn't touch any of the GFX cores or anything like that for any of these. And I was able to get at 68 frames per second. Not too shabby. Which is a huge increase. Just by increasing, so, I mean, take that for what it is. Stock out of the box, I was getting 51 frames per second. If you just take this thing out, stick it in your CPU, start playing games with it right as it is out of the box, you're looking, let's say you're looking at 51 frames per second on a specific game. All you have to do is increase the VRAM and increase your RAM stick speed, and you can get it up to around 67 frames per second. I mean, yes, I have it at 3.9 gigahertz on all 4 cores, but this thing boosts to 3.9 on 1 core anyway, so it would be similar, you know, to what that is inside of a game on 1 core anyways. But it's a difference, you know, of fucking 16 frames per second. That's huge. I mean, you can only play some of these top games at 16 frames per second. That's what you're playing the entire fucking game at, you know. So if you can increase one game by possibly 16 frames per second, it can make a big-ass difference. And then here, obviously, you know, I got it to 68. I've got it up to 72 by messing with the GFX cores and shit. So what we'll do next is actually go tinker with those. Now, you can use AMD Ryzen Master software. This is a free download. If you're afraid to tinker with the BIOS settings, this is another way of tinkering with your overclocking and stuff like that. It's a little weird how it displays everything. I'll be honest. Up here in the top is just kind of like a running display of a bunch of random shit. It does tell you your TSP, total socket power, CPU power, your TDP, your PTC, which is when it'll shut off. It'll thermal throttle at 95 degrees Celsius, and then it shows your temperature over here at 29 degrees Celsius. But you can go into, like, I go into game mode, and I already have one saved in here because I was tinkering with this one too, as well as my overclocking in my BIOS. And this one I had pretty cranked up. I had it at 1690, which I don't think I had stable. I'm pretty sure I couldn't get that stable. And the SoC voltage wasn't changing along with this, which kind of worries me. Maybe that's why I couldn't get it stable. See, in your BIOS, your SoC voltage will automatically go up when you change your GFX voltage, but that does not happen here in the Ryzen Master software. So that's something to be aware of. Usually they match equally. Like if I change this to 1.29, this is going to 1.29. Voltage applies for both graphics and memory. So I'm not sure. I'm going to turn this one back down. Actually, I don't know if I want to use this for you guys, because I'd like you guys to learn. I want you guys to teach you guys the BIOS one. That's the best way, honestly, to do all this stuff. So let's just close this. Let's cancel it. I'm not even going to use it. So let's go back into the BIOS, guys, and let's overclock some other shit real quick. This video is getting very long. Restart. So if you don't do anything else from here, at least just do what I showed you. Increase your RAM speed as high as you can get it by, without having to change voltage and tinker with, manual presets and all that stuff. Manual settings. Just do the presets. Do that AXMP, put it to its highest, and go and play with it, So back here in the BIOS, real simple for the most part. CPU ratio, you change yourself. GFX clock frequency, that's the same thing as the CPU ratio. It's just for your GPU side of it. So changing this will increase your GPU speed. Right out of the box, I believe the Ryzen 5 sits around 1200, 1300 megahertz on the GFX clock frequency. And I've cranked mine all the way up to 1680. I've cranked it up to 1700. I just can't get it stable at 1700. So I don't recommend going anywhere near 1700 if you're running on a stock cooler. But you can definitely get some boost potential out of it even with the stock cooler. So we're not even going to tinker with the CPU ratio. We'll just increase the GFX clock frequency. Let's say 1450. That's a pretty decent, I think, little jump above what it's stock at. See, it doesn't tell you what it comes stock at. That's some of the annoying part sometimes. Let me turn Game Boost on too. So that's going to increase the what's it called? You know, the thermal, or not the thermal, the CPU clock speed. So we're going to set it to 1450, and now I've cranked mine up. Like, what's nice about this, so here's the thing, guys. Don't be worried about hurting your shit or damaging your shit. I changed everything on here, changed my fucking RAM speeds, tried to go up to 33 megahertz on my RAM, and increase the voltage and all that shit, and I crashed the fuck out of this thing. It would not restart, would not reboot, nothing. Like, if you know, usually it just beeps at you and it yells at you and it tells you it can't read, and it resets itself back to the last BIOS setting that it knows is stable, or it'll go back to complete stock if it has to. Mine wouldn't even do that. It fucking straight died, and I was really scared. So I went in, I jumped the CMOS. You know, I just used a screwdriver on the two CMOS little things and held it there for 5 seconds. I go. Obviously, you have to unplug everything first. Not everything, just unplug your power cord from the whole machine and everything. Turn everything off. Jump the CMOS. Plug everything back in. Turn it on. And it goes back to pretty much factory default settings. And that was the only way I could get it to reset. And even after I did it, it was being really weird and giving me some weird issues. I tried to do a previous video, and it was giving me nothing but problems. So I reset back to factory defaults again, and that's where we started this video. So I'm going to increase the core voltage, because 1.45 is probably going to need a little bit more juice. So I've gone all the way up to 1.3, and if you do that, you can just start typing in 1300, it turns red. If it turns red, that's letting you know that is either the maximum value that this motherboard recommends for this guy, or it's above the maximum value, so you want to go down. So like I could go to 12900, hit enter, and it'll auto adjust to whatever the closest thing to that is, which is 12875. Don't run at this. That's way too high. Let's go down to like 1200, honestly. 1.2 volts should be enough to handle the 1450 megahertz. And then we can always jump up in megahertz from there, little by little, until it starts crashing on us, or it starts thermal throttling, whatever comes first. Other than that, you could change your CPU core voltage, but since we're leaving it at stock, I'm not going to change that. We're just going to leave it at auto, and it's running at 1.3 volts by itself. The highest I've ever set it by myself anyways is 1.35. I think when I had the 4.1 gigahertz, I think I was still only sitting at 1.35, maybe 1.375. So we're not going to change that. DRAM voltage is the only other thing you would ever really change. The DRAM voltage is to your RAM sticks, and it's at auto. It's doing a good job at 3200 megahertz. I don't see any reason to try and change it. So let's leave it alone. So right now, we're going to go to save. Actually, you can just hit F10. So CPU one fartsman, smart fan control enabled to disabled. Pump one smart fan control enabled disabled. Now I believe it's doing that because of the game boost that I turned on. It's turning off the smart fan controls, which we can go look at just to be safe and make sure we didn't fuck anything up. So let's see. We can go to hardware monitor. Smart fan mode is turned off, which would pretty much just control exactly where it wants the fans to run at one time, and at what time. But the CPU's running at 31 degrees, even with it, you know, fucking, I can hear it all cranked itself up and shit like that. So it's running, you know, nice and cool. All full speed. I can set all my fans at full speed. Turn them down to default just to see what it did. Just to see if my temperature jumped and spiked real quick, and it didn't. So I'm just going to cancel whatever I just fucking did to it, you know. So I all set cancel. And other than that, overclocking. So I guess we'll turn the game boost off. And we'll go back. And the smart fan mode comes back on, see? So what it does is it tries to determine, it's like, let's see, right over here is degrees in Celsius. And then over here is what RPMs it's going to run at. And you can adjust these. You know, you can move these around. And I'm just going to cancel anything I just did, just to be safe. So when it hits 60 degrees Celsius, that's when it kicks up to about 4,200 RPMs. And that's where cooling really, I mean, starts at for the most part. Down here is negligible. Anything under like 60 degrees is pretty much negligible. So let's see. So they're going to run at, once they hit, if they do hit 70 degrees, they run at 63%. If they do make it up somewhere around 85 degrees, they're going to run at 100%. Because the TDP, or the whatever it is, the maximum value you can hit on this guy is 95 degrees Celsius, and then it is going to thermal throttle and shut itself off pretty much. So once it gets to 85, you want those fans running at 100%. Same with the pump as well too. It's set on the smart fan mode as well. And once it hits 85 degrees, it runs at 100% to try and cool that bitch down as quick as possible. I don't think I've ever got it up to that. Whoa, hold on a second. Why is this at 0 RPMs? Oh, 39. Did I change that? I must have changed that. So it's saying 39 degrees Celsius. I'm not sure. 39, 34, 35, 34. Because my CPU fan isn't running at all right now for some reason. I just switched it all back to default. That's the one thing, like, I've never tinkered with fan controls before and stuff like that, so I'm not exactly sure how they should really be set. But I'm sure there's videos out there you can check out that will go over that stuff for you, you know, and all that kind of good stuff. But I've got case fans and all that stuff that help cool it down too, that are always running. So let's close out of that. Alright guys, so other than that, all we've changed, let's go to save and exit, save and reboot. Hit no, because I'm going to use F10 instead, just so that you guys are, you know, keeping up. So all we changed was the clock frequency to the 1450 megahertz. That's increasing our GPU speed. Changed the voltage from auto to 1.2 volts, because when you change this in a manual, you pretty much have, I believe you have to type that in. Even though I guess I could have, let's try that real quick. Overclocking. Let's go back here, because I changed the GFX core to 1450, Can I go back to auto on this? Auto. Hit enter. Huh, it did. It did go back to auto. So maybe I don't have to change that myself. So let's go to 1450, leave it on auto, and let's see if we make it crash. Let's see if you have to pick it yourself. So F10. GFX clock. So that's all we did was change the clock frequency. Everything else is still the same. We just increased the clock from like the 1300 to 1450. So we're going to restart, see what happens. It's going through its boot steps. Okay, and we're going to let it load up into Windows. And problem. Video TDR failure. So, that's probably because of the voltage. So I don't think auto is a good option if you're changing it yourself. If you're not letting it sit on auto, if you're not letting your GFX core frequency be set to auto, I don't think auto is the way to go. So we're going to go to 1.2 again, because that's what I was originally going to test. So let's hit settings, save and exit, save changes and reboot. So again, we're going to, whoa. Oh yeah. So whenever you change your GFX core voltage, it's automatically going to change your CPU NB SoC voltage. They just, like I was saying, they're always equal for the most part. Your motherboard makes that happen, and apparently that's the way it likes to be. So let it be what it wants to be. You can't change it. If you go down and you try to change that SoC voltage back, it'll change the core or the GPU core voltage back as well too. So they are connected. But again, in the Ryzen Master software, it looks like you can change one without the other, no problem, which is weird. So I'm not exactly sure how those two correlate with each other. And crash again. Ah, shit. So here's the problem I was hitting before. Thread stuck in device driver. I have no idea what that fucking means. Thread stuck in device driver. So I did get this issue before when I was tinkering with this fucking thing. I'm just gonna let it boot again. Yeah, I know Windows didn't load correctly. Restart my PC. Alright, let's see what happens. So again, this is kind of, just something you gotta expect when you're doing overclocking and shit like that. You're gonna hit issues, you're gonna hit weird things. Sometimes the shit ain't gonna work. And sometimes it will. Oh, god damn it, motherfucker. I gotta stop doing that. I'm gonna break my fucking phone. And it looks like it just crashed again. I tried to load up Windows. Son of a bitch. And then it crashed. So, I think 1.2 volts might be a little too much. Or it's not enough. I'm not really sure. Because I know I can run 1.28 on, a higher setting. I can go way the fuck up and run 1.2 something. So let's try and increase it to 1.2, I don't know, let's say 4. So it goes to 1, 2, 3. So we're going to just try and save changes and reboot, change the core voltage, and hit yes. See what happens. So we're giving it more juice, more voltage, Oh, there was still a glitch right there. Did you see it? I don't know if this is going to run stable or not. But this is part of testing. So this is what overclocking means. You know, going in, trying different values, trying different voltages, trying different speeds, trying to load up into Windows, and then you have to run like a benchmark or a stress test or something like that real quick and see if everything crashes. And if it doesn't, you're good. You can go back in, run a different stress test. You know, once you start getting up into the really high numbers, you want to run different benchmarks, different stress tests, to try it in different ways, because like I was saying, there's certain things work great on certain ones, and then the other benchmark just crashes all the time, even though it's an older one. It does not fucking want to work correctly. So we're going to go to Cinebench again real quick, since we just did this before. Now that we have our GFX core clock cranked up a little bit, we're running at 1450 with a higher voltage. We're going to go ahead and run the OpenGL again, which is the graphics test. And we're going to see what happens. I believe last time, what did we have? Like an 8... What did we have? 830 something maybe? I could have saved it, but so I'm pretty sure it was around 830 something. Obviously, I can just rewind the video and kind of look, but this should be a much better score. And that's all we did, was just increase the GPU speed. We're still left the CPU cores running at 3.6 gigahertz, I'm sorry. You can see it here, 3.6 gigahertz. It does recognize the AMD Radeon RX Vega 11 graphics. Alright, so we're around 830 last time. Oh, wait a minute. I'm thinking of the CPU core. Jesus. It was FPS. FPS is what we were running at. So stock out of the box, this thing runs 50 something. Oh, shit. I don't remember what we said, guys. I'm an idiot. Sorry, I'm getting stoned and I'm starting to forget stuff. But it's right here in screenshots. Oh, hey, that's a whole different... Oh, that's nice. That finally fucking popped up here, considering I've never been able to get it to pop up here. Alright, so this was what I was showing you with 67. So this one was GFX core clock completely normal, and just the CPU cranked up to 3.9 on all cores. I was getting 67 frames per second, and we just got 69.27. So the difference between cranking up your CPU up to 3.9 gigahertz with 3200 megahertz and blah 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 is not a big difference between